The hour is 7 p.m. Having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of Keene City Council. The meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and Spectrum Channel 1302. Video is also streamed from the city's website and is posted by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. If you'd like to receive an electronic City Council packet to reference while viewing future broadcasts, please contact the City Clerk's office during regular business hours or go to the city's website and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The agenda is also accessible from any mobile device. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Brian J. Lake.
Here.
Michael J. Remy.
Here.
Gladys Johnson.
Here.
Michael Giacomo.
Here.
Randy L. Filio.
Here.
Robert C. Williams.
Here.
Philip M. Jones.
Present.
Andrew M. Madison.
Here.
Chrissy Roberts.
Here.
Raleigh C. Omerod.
Here.
Bettina A. Chadbourne. Catherine I. Workman.
Here.
Mitchell H. Greenwald.
Here.
Kaden Bosley.
Here.
Thomas F. Powers.
Here.
Thank you. Councilor Giacomo, will you please lead us in the pledge? All right, just a couple of announcements. There will be a meeting of the Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee coming up on Tuesday, June 6th, to consider amendments to the city charter regarding the municipal primary. The meeting will start at 6 p.m. and it will be held here in council chambers. The council's summer vacation schedule will start with the cancellation of the July 26th and 27th MSFI and FOP committee meetings, as well as the August 3rd city council meeting. So in addition, the August 9th and August 10th PLD and FOP committee meetings will also be canceled as they'll have no business. So the council will return to its normal meeting schedule for the August 17th meeting. Which brings us to the minutes. I'm looking for a motion from Councilor Powers, a second by Councilor Bosley, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to accept the minutes from the May 18th, 2023 regular meeting as printed.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Bosley. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. So without objection, I'm going to call forward the MSFI recommendation on the downtown improvement and reconstruction project because we have a full house and a hot room. And so I'm going to do that now without objection, which will bring us to the MSFI recommendation.
Municipal Services Facility and Infrastructure Committee report relative to the downtown improvement and reconstruction project. On a vote of 3-2, the Municipal Services Facility and Infrastructure Committee recommends the council with respect to the proposed downtown infrastructure project do the following. That Central Square remains in the existing configuration, but with improvements to lane markings, lengths of crosswalks, and traffic lighting systems. That the improvements to Main Street maximize sidewalk widths while also keeping parking in the center median. That the raised crossing table crossing Main Street to Gilboa Avenue and Railroad Square be installed as proposed. That the remaining crosswalks on Main Street be evaluated for potential elimination of mid-block crossings and/or the installation of pedestrian lighting systems as appropriate. That the project include infrastructure, water and sewer for the installation of public bathrooms at a later date. That protected bike lanes not be included in the final design. That during the final design, an evaluation be done of all turning movements to connected side streets for possible alteration or improvement. And finally, that Gilboa Avenue remains with two-way traffic.
Looking at Councilor Greenwald for a motion, please. Councilor Filio for a second.
Move to carry out the intent of the committee report. Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Greenwald, seconded by Councilor Filio. Councilor Greenwald.
The change in the agenda kind of caught me a little off, but at least I'm prepared. I thought you were all here for the budget this evening. Anyway, thank you all for coming. This has been a long process. The MSFI committee did finally meet, and we received testimony from the public. I'm sure we all received emails, and everywhere I went anyway, supermarket, on the street, one thing or another, I got opinions. for, against, one thing or another. The public is really, really engaged in this process, which is a good thing. Downtown is very, very important to Keene. A lot of person-to-person comments. At the MSFI committee, we heard from the public. We heard from a organized lobby group, which presented its case extremely well. But now it's time when the city council joins the conversation once again. According to the rules of order and state rules, the city council could not speak at the actual committee meetings, but now this is your time. We had public information sessions, workshops, and finally it came to the MSFI. And now is the time for decision. And we'll say this a couple of times. There's always going to be another idea, a new slant. Someone's got another great way to do something. But we need to move forward. There's always going to be another study, more time to think about it. We need to do something now. It's costing money. The longer we wait, the underground infrastructure is more at risk, decaying. Everything is going to cost more to do what needs to be done. We need to be brave, my fellow councilors, and do what we are elected to do, and that is, in my mind, represent the interests of the residents of Keene. But also, let me just give you a little, something to be a little more relaxed about, not to stress too much. By the time the shovel hits the ground, there'll be another 2 years, there will be another council which may review everything we've done and change it. But we need to get something on the books so the city manager can go out, get the project designed, and get the funding. You heard the motion, the different elements that are reflected by the committee. I'm sure that the minority report of my committee will be heard. But I do want to share with you my personal decision process. I listen to the public. I listen to the downtown community, and that means the merchants and property owners, who in my mind really have the most at stake here. And what I heard was, do the underground work before it fails. Respect the historic Central Square. Minimize cost. Say it again, minimize cost. It's going up considerably as we speak. The basic plan, which I support, will save almost $1 million. Minimize disruption. We've spoken to the Public Works Department. We still haven't really fleshed out whether a 7-day work week or extra hours would be the answer, but to consider it. Maintain the parking. I have 30, 40 years on Main Street as a retail merchant and now as a business owner. Parking is key to the survival of downtown. Needs to be maintained. And finally, keeping Gilboa Avenue as a two-way road until we actually have a plan made a lot of sense. This was my thought. And therefore, what I personally am recommending, the square remains with some minor adjustments to the geometry, which the consultants can work with. We need new traffic signals. Parking remains in the center strip. Traffic lanes remain as they are. And sidewalk space to be used by pedestrians and outdoor dining. I would love to have bike lanes, but it's a choice. We can't move the buildings, and if I'm making the priority, keep the center parking, in my mind anyhow, the bike lanes don't fit. I'm sorry. I have a bike. I now have an electric bike. I'm riding all around downtown, the perimeter. No, I'm not riding on Main Street. No, I'm not riding on the sidewalk. I think that's really dangerous for pedestrians. I went to Amsterdam a couple of years ago. Bicycles rule the city. They have parking garages for bicycles. Great. They run you over. It is dangerous, dangerous. We have so much chaos on Main Street between pedestrians, trucks, deliveries, cars, dining. Something's got to give. There just is no place. I'm sorry. I wish it could be, but we can't move the buildings to no room. So as I considered this step by step in a decision process, the conclusion became very clear as how I feel. A lot of the issues that should be discussed, will be discussed in the final design, as it's called. That's dealing with lane markings and traffic signals, crosswalk lightings, bike racks, what? Okay, bollards for the events. Yeah, right. Event protection, a lot of the fine tuning of it, but we need to get this on paper to get the city manager out there so she can go out after the money. I'm asking you, my fellow counselors, be brave, make a decision. Hopefully listen to the MSFI committee and listen to the public. They elected us. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Counselor Bosley.
No one else?
Counselor Bosley.
So, I think I'm gonna do something. I think I'm gonna do something tonight that I think is kind of brave. And, I wanna make a motion to amend the MSFI recommendation. I would like to move to refer the MSFI recommendation to a council workshop with a date to be established after the June 12th presentation from Jeff Speck, that's hosted by the Keene Downtown Group. I would also like to add to this, that the council receives an analysis from Stantec reviewing the current sidewalk cafe license ordinance and against the proposed designs to determine conflicts with proposed bike lanes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion from Counselor Bosley, seconded by Counselor Omeron. Any further discussion?
Can
Yes,
I-
Counselor Bosley?
Can I speak to that? Thank you,
Yeah.
Your Honor. So, first of all, I'd like to point out to this council that we all just agreed to spend $5,000 of city funds toward this presentation from Jeff Speck, reviewing our downtown community and what improvements he might be able to suggest for us. And I truly believe that we need to consider his ideas and expertise before we make a final decision. Also, there were several counselors who asked for items during our very first council workshop that were not brought forward before MSFI. I wasn't the only one. I included my interest in my motion tonight. But there were other requests that were not flushed out and brought before MSFI to be heard. One of those items is a review of the current design and how they would negatively impact our current sidewalk cafes. I would also like to know where sidewalks are expanding and if there would be other restaurants who could potentially benefit from a sidewalk cafe that currently do not have access to one. I believe unintentionally that our council was led to believe that we would be able to fully contribute questions and comments during the MSFI process. We were made quickly aware that our attendance would create a quorum of the full council and that anyone not on MSFI would not be able to contribute again until this meeting. I also have information from a finance committee member, as well as the city manager, that our grant funds are dependent on different facets of this plan being included. And I think that an open discussion is required around that part of this project before making a decision that could have financial unintended consequences to the whole community. For all of these reasons, I support this going back to a full council workshop process again where we can contribute. And I hope that each of you can see that to make this a successful project, we will need to give it the time it deserves to do it right.
Any discussion on the amendment? Yes, Counselor Workman?
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Counselor Bosley. I think a workshop wouldn't hurt us at this point. We do still have time to make decisions. This isn't something that needs to be a rushed decision. We have until the end of the summer before we really have to make a decision. One thing I would ask is if we do a full council workshop, that we try to schedule it, if possible, in lieu of our city council meeting on the 15th, that we do our workshop that day. We all tend to, we know we're available on city council evenings. And then if we meet as a council for a workshop on the 15th, that out of that workshop, the recommendations go back to MSFI for June 28th's meeting. I also would, I know for myself, the other previous workshops, I didn't feel as though the discussion was as fruitful as it could be. So I would like to have more input on the way that that workshop is formatted. For me, I really have questions that I would like Stan Tech and Public Works. I don't need them to present more about the project. I want them to come to the workshop ready to answer our specific questions the night of that workshop, whether that means having an assistant behind the scenes looking up the answers to the questions in real time and getting back to us before the end of the meeting. But that's how I would like to see the workshop designed. Thank you.
And just to be clear, it's a motion to refer to this workshop, not an amendment. Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not going to support the amendment to refer it back to MSI. We've already had a number of workshops. We had a lot of information provided. We were given plenty of opportunity to ask questions. And if we weren't really prepared to ask the questions, that's part of our responsibility to prep ourselves so we can show up here to ask the questions. And just like tonight, past week, I've been doing a lot of work and research since we had our MSI meeting based on some of the things that were brought up. We can't afford to keep sending it back to committee, back and forth, if someone says, well, I didn't really get a chance to ask that question because I didn't know that question at that time. We'll never be at the point that we will know every question to ask. And sooner or later, we're going to be asking questions that they can't answer, and then that will put our support staff, the city staff, in a really embarrassing situation, is because I could go to the city engineer. What about this? Should this be 1/8 of an inch or should it be 3/16 of an inch? And he may go like this, and we just put them. We here to make a decision based on the information that we have on hand. We've been provided a lot of detailed information, and while I don't agree with my fellow councilman the way he presented it, stating, oh, we got another 2 years, someone else can make a change. No, hopefully we make the right decision now, and people may modify that decision as the need goes. So I recommend, and I'm not going to support, going backwards. Let's make the decision and let's get it going. And as we get it going, more questions will arise, and then we'll be able to find those answers to those questions.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you very much. I did attend the last meeting, and it was really interesting to see how the other committees work. I have been now to all of them in various ways. I didn't get a chance to speak because I didn't realize we're not supposed to speak if we're counselors at those meetings. And the chair was very kind to me, no questions, but I just was confused by that. I just want to make sure that regardless what we do with the bikes, I have had a lot of people get in touch with me who have said they feel left out of the main street if they can't use their bikes. They like to come riding their bikes. They like to go into the businesses and do their business. If I don't tell you folks that, then I am not being courteous to my constituents. So I just wanted to put that out there. I heard the conversation. There's only so much room. I heard that if you're going to have parklets, this is what's going to happen. If you have parking, this. So it really all makes sense. But I really have to get my people's voice out there. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilor Giacomo.
Thank you, Your Honor. In regards to Councilor Roberts' comments, where was this indignance about delaying this back last November when the recommendation came forward from the Downtown Infrastructure Committee, the committee that was selected from people that had a stake in downtown, that presented a recommendation to this council? Where was this rush then? We're now 6 months later after that. 6 months now we have delayed until now there's a 3-2 vote in favor of the way that you want it, and now suddenly it's a rush. Now we've got a rush to push this thing through. That doesn't seem right to me. We have someone who is literally an international expert in his field, who is interested in coming to Keene, and we're asking to delay it until after we can hear what he has to say. I don't see that as being anything other than more information. This is more valuable information that our council can gain to help us make better decisions. And at the end of the day, if our goal here isn't to make the best decision we possibly can, what the hell are we doing here?
Counselor Williams?
Thank you. I think this council needs to spend a little more time considering the implications of how we're going to pay for this. It's a $14 million project, and based on what went into the project at MSFI, no change to the square, no change to the traffic pattern, no bike lanes. I don't think we're going to be able to take that to the Department of Transportation and say, hey, we want to get a grant for all the renewable and environmentally friendly things we're doing, because we're really not doing anything. We're digging it up and we're going to keep it the same way it is. We're not going to get any grant money for that. I'm not talking about a small grant either. I'm not talking about $500,000. If you look into the RAISE grants, there are cities getting $10, $20, $25 million. We could easily get 8, 10, 15 million for this, which would, boy, that would really offset. This is a $14 million project. It's going to be higher by the time it comes around. We're going to need help with that. I don't want to be going to the taxpayers of Ward 2 and say, hey, look, downtown's got another project. Let's go fund downtown's project. In Ward 2, we like the money to come out of downtown and help us with our sidewalks, and finally that's starting to happen. But putting $14 million on the backs of the taxpayers is a little much for me when we know that there's grant money out there available that really could pay for most of it if we play our cards right.
Any more discussion on the motion to refer? Counselor Filio.
Thank you. I don't really know where to start here. As far as the motion, and to say, well, another speaker wants to come into town, who's, by the way, being paid some good money to do it. That part I object to, because we can keep inviting speaker after speaker after speaker, or somebody else can, until we get a speaker that says what we want to hear. It seems like to this point, it's like, that's not what I want to hear. That's not what that's what I want to hear, and that's the problem I have with that. This project's been going on for quite a long time now. In my opinion, I've said it before, I think it's been botched from the beginning, and I'm to the point where I think I'm ready to just say, let's throw it in the trash and wait for a new mayor and new council to come in, because I don't know where we go with this. Everybody wants a new speaker to come in. They want to have somebody else talk. We said, Santec did a great job. Now the vote comes out of MSFI, and it's like, no, wait a second, we want to hear somebody else. And that's the problem that I have with that. And, it's been a lot of problems that I've had with this. When we asked it was going to be $7 million, where did that come from? It's like, well, that's where it comes from. Before the ink can dry, it's at $14 million. And now we're hearing, well, if you don't do it our way, and if we don't get this exact design, we're not going to get grant money. So now it's like we're being pushed back to say, do it our way, or there's no grant money out there. And I've checked into that, and that's completely wrong. And to say MSFI said we're not going to do anything, that isn't true at all. I mean, there's computerized lights to be had to move traffic more. We've mentioned right turn on reds. There's simple things that can be done. So yes, we are looking to improve traffic. To say we're going to do nothing is wrong. Now, a couple of councilors said, well, we want to listen to somebody else. I have listened to somebody. I've listened to my constituents. And this particular issue with the common and the little egg about, you want to call it, in the green spot, well, the close to 1,000 people that have contacted me since 6 months ago, it's 90 to 95% against this proposal. That's who I listen to. I don't need another speaker to come in for $21,000 or whatever he says. I can pay a speaker $20,000. He'll probably come say what I want him to say. Pay him enough, they'll say anything you want. That's why everybody has an expert. We've been going on months and months and months on this. We finally get it to a committee. We come out with a report based on our constituents. And now it's like, no, we want to send it back because we're not hearing what we want to hear. Now, as part of, I can even say, well, if you need more information on the bike pass because you don't feel you have enough, okay, I could split that. But I can't split the downtown mini roundabout and the downtown green space when 90 to 95% of our constituents said don't do it. They elected us. We listened to them too. And a so-called expert comes in for his $20,000 or whatever we're paying him, so be it. Who's an expert that comes in after him? Because Councilor Greenwald and I and others have been an engineer that used to live in Keene has contacted us and said the whole drawing's messed up and it will fail. We're gonna pay him $20,000 to come in because he might agree more with what I'm thinking. As far as anybody else and any other expert coming in, be done with it. Because once again, you can get anybody to say anything if you pay him enough. And once again, this guy won't come to Keene unless you pay him enough, okay? You know, listen to him, he happened to be on the radio the other day for free. And most of what he mentioned wasn't even downtown Keene, it was elsewhere. And they asked him, have you been to Keene? No, I'm looking at it on the computer. That's our expert. So once again, my experts are my constituents. I've listened to them, and this isn't like a 60-40. This is like a 90-10, 95-5. Those are the ones that I listen to. And hopefully this November, we listen to them again, and they pay attention who didn't listen to them.
Okay, well, all right. On the amendment, or the referral, I'm sorry, I keep screwing that up. On the motion to refer, Counselor Madison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I view this as a good opportunity for us to step back, take a breather, think it through a little more, and then make a decision. Like Councilor Giacomo said, there seemed to be this upset over how fast the project was moving forward, and now all of a sudden, we need to rush. I don't see it that way. Why don't we keep going slow? Why don't we keep being methodical? More information is a good thing. And, you know, I listen to my constituents too. In fact, I walked home from the last MSFI meeting where I wasn't allowed to speak. You could. So you got to ask 6 rounds of questions. I didn't. I only got 4. But I listened to my constituents who came and talked about bike lanes and then walked home with them and listened to them talk about how they felt they were treated with overt hostility from some members of the committee. And I thought that was wrong, that some members of the committee would use their position to attack during the public comment section of the MSFI meeting what their concerns. They're voting members of the city. They live in my neighborhood. They don't live in Swansea, they live in my neighborhood. So they're actual constituents of this city. So I'm sorry, but we need to take a step back and look at this again. And I fully support Councilor Bosley's proposal.
Okay. For the first time, Counselor Chadbourne.
Thanks. Just for clarification, if I may, through you, I didn't get the impression that Counselor Bosley was suggesting that it goes back to MSFI, but rather goes to
No.
another workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And I just wanted to say, more information is always helpful. And this is a very major project. It's going to impact everybody. And while I didn't support the 5,000, it wasn't the idea that I wasn't supporting. It was the idea of only 150 people being able to go. But it would behoove us to go to that and give this a little more time. We do have a few more months, and I think it's such a big decision that we need to take a step back. So I support Councilor Bosley's motion.
All right, thank you. I saw Counselor Omrod and then Counselor Bosley.
Thank you, Mayor Hansel. Fellow city councilors and members of the public, I am supporting the amendment to send this back to another workshop for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is when we heard from our constituents that they talked about their families, we talked about the people who are building the reputation of this city as a bikeable city and this whole region. When we heard from people that said, we're going to organize ourselves to help the city make an informed decision about multimodal transportation. By the way, that's where a big chunk of the grants come from, is a multimodal, which means walking, biking, electric vehicles, all of those things, which really haven't been discussed quite enough. Another reason is that I would not support freezing the design of the square. The reason I wouldn't do that is because there are some tweaks that we can do when we have the full knowledge and the full information from Mr. Speck as he comes to talk to us. So if we rush ahead right now and say, no, I don't want to hear any more, it's like we're saying, I am going to be as uninformed as I want to be. I don't think that's where I can come out. So I am supporting the motion.
Okay, Counselor Mosley, and then Counselor Roberts.
Thank you. Just for a point of clarity, I didn't not do my homework. I asked for this analysis at Heberton Hall 4 months ago. I asked the city manager for the analysis. I asked Stan Tech for the analysis. I spoke at our first council workshop and I asked for this analysis. When I got to that first MSFI meeting without any data, and I realized that I couldn't speak, I spoke to the chair of MSFI and I asked for this analysis. And this is the only platform that I think that I can get any results. Putting it on the record, asking for it in a motion, asking for direction, and bringing data back to us. I'm never gonna make a decision that I do not feel like is a fully informed decision. We're talking about $15 million of the public's money we're basically potentially talking about $15 million bike lanes. These $15 million bike lanes are gonna run straight through 70% of our downtown sidewalk cafes if we don't adjust where these lanes are. I'm not comfortable sitting here and saying, well, we've all had enough time, because we have not had enough time. We have been put in a box and silenced for the last month and not allowed to get the data so that we can all be on the exact same page at the exact same time. When individual counselors go to the public works director or go to city staff or go to the consultant, they're getting information based off the questions they're asking. And then that information gets potentially spread via grapevine to other individuals to try to make decisions off from. All of that data should be being given to us at the same time, and we should be allowed to discuss it as a community of colleagues here and come up with a plan that makes sense going forward for the whole community. We have heard the public's input. We have heard from the individuals that are interested in bikes, that aren't interested in bikes, that are interested in the roundabout, that aren't interested in the roundabout. Hopefully, I did not agree with spending the $5,000 on this outside consultant. But guess what? We ponied up the money. So why are we not going to get the benefit from that? So, and I've spoken with the city manager. My understanding is there's no rush on grant applications, that we have plenty of time to put this project on pause for another few weeks, get through some of this data and sit down and articulately come up with a plan that makes sense for the community.
Counselor Roberts.
Yes, Your Honor, to address some of the comments, I feel it's extremely important that we have the proper decorum, because everything we're saying is being recorded and being viewed. To come and say that we were attacking some of the people in the audience or was asking questions at the last meeting, I feel that we try our best not to bring up personal biases in. We try our best not to attack people, but to go and say, yes, people were talking about being attacked by fellow council people. That doesn't make us look good. As far as we're talking about, well, no one said anything 5, 6, 7 months ago, and now we want to rush it. What I heard over the last 6, 7 months was not about the rushing, it was about the process. The complaint was over and over and over again, this normally goes to MSI first, and then it moves through and up. And so it finally, then you compromised, you had the public workshops, we had the workshops. And so then it went to FMFI, and they had a workshop, and then it was a vote. So now where I'm listening to the motion is we're going to have another workshop, and whatever information is gathered from that workshop will not be allowed to go to FMSF alphabet to process that and maybe come up with a new decision. If I listen to what the motion is, we have the workshop, and then based on what happens in that workshop, it comes right back to the full council for a decision, again bypassing. So it gets me kind of confused.
Not necessarily. Counselor Mosley?
So just to clarify, I don't make a plan post-workshop for where this will go. I think at our last workshop, the council that was present decided that it was time for it to go to MSFI. I think that the council that's present at the workshop, whenever we schedule it, should decide what the next step is.
Okay, are we getting ready to vote on the motion to refer at this point? All right, so we're getting ready for a vote. I'm giving my photographer friend a heads up on that. Everybody ready for a vote?
Roll call, please.
Kat? Yep. All right, roll call.
Yes.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
No.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
No.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
No.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Greenwald?
I'm not too good at math, but I'm going to say no.
Counselor Mosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
I have 4 opposed, so the motion carries, and it is referred to a workshop date to be determined after the Jeff Speck engagement. So that brings us back to our regular agenda, and we've got a couple public hearings. Thank you to the people who need to present at those public hearings for hanging out. We've got number 1.
Notice is hereby given that a site visit and a public hearing are scheduled before the Keene City Council to consider a petition on behalf of Nuevo Transfers LLC for the layout of Magnolia Way as a public way and the acceptance of warranty deeds and an easement for access and maintenance of trees per the mayor and councilors of the city of Keene, the 20th day of April, 2023.
And I'd recognize the city engineer, Don Lucier, for an introduction.
Thank you, Your Honor. Don Lucier, city engineer. Happy to be here tonight to talk to you about the layout of Magnolia Way. The city has received a petition to lay out Magnolia Way as a public roadway. This has actually been before the city council in the past. The subdivision of Magnolia Way was actually reviewed and approved by the planning board back in 2005. The council had accepted the layout in 2006. Unfortunately, the construction wasn't completed within the 36-month timeframe that's allowed in our city code, so that approval expired. So we're here again to refresh and reinitiate that approval. In that time, the intervening 7 years, the proposal and the subdivision layout and infrastructure hasn't changed. So the graphic that you see on the screens right now is actually the approved subdivision from 2005. The right-of-way that the city will be responsible for, the maintenance in perpetuity hasn't changed, and it's what you see there today. Along with the roadway, of course, the petitioner is asking the city to accept for public maintenance the infrastructure serving this subdivision. On the graphic here, you see color-coded. It will include sidewalks on the northern side of Magnolia Way, that's shown in yellow, along with public sewers shown in green, public water main and fire hydrants shown in blue, street light that's circled in orange all the way to the left there, and a variety of drainage and stormwater management / treatment systems that are highlighted in blue, or excuse me, purple. If you go out there today, you know, most of that construction has been completed. Back in 2012, the city actually gave the developer a punch list of things that still needed to be completed. Some of that still remains to be done. We're also, at this point, because it has been, you know, almost 10 years, or more than 10 years, 13 years, since the construction began, we are asking them to do some testing and verification to make sure that before the city accepts that infrastructure, that it's up to snuff, it hasn't deteriorated over time, and that we're accepting it, you know, meeting our current standards. That testing still has to occur. Along with the public right-of-way and infrastructure, the applicant is also asking the city to accept a easement for the maintenance of street trees to be planted. Of course, the city code requires street trees be planted as part of the subdivision. The applicant has proposed planting them on the private property side, but in order for them to be considered street trees, we have to have the right to maintain them and replant them if needed over time. So they're giving us an easement to effectuate that. A couple of quirky things with this project, because it has been so long. One of the properties shown in the, I guess that's going to be the lower right-hand side of the screen. I don't know if I point to it. Do you see my marker? Oh, you can. Good. This parcel here has actually already been built. There's a house there. That parcel has been transferred to a new homeowner. So in the petition, you'll see that it talks about a requirement for the petitioner to secure a waiver of damages and the right to transfer the street tree easement to the city. That's because there's a separate owner involved now, and they have to negotiate with that property owner to transfer the street tree easement and also waive any damages laying out the roadway may entail. And that is, one thing, very important thing, actually, I almost forgot to mention. Some time ago, the developer, in working with private utilities and wanting to try to get the construction moving, granted an easement to, then it was Public Services of New Hampshire, PSNH, and Verizon, to put their infrastructure within the area that's now being laid out as Magnolia Way. Typically, the utilities would come in after the city has accepted it and laid it out as a public way, and they would get a license from the city. That license is regulated by state statute, and basically what it says is that if the city ever needs to move that road or widen the road or change anything for a public project, we have the right to tell them to move their facilities at their own expense. In this case, because the easement that they hold grants them more rights than a license would, they would be entitled to be compensated if we had to have them move that. They could, refuse to move it, I suppose. So it is a little bit of a different situation, and it comes with at least some risk, right? To some future city council may have to deal with this problem that ordinarily wouldn't be part of a subdivision. I could stop there and answer any questions about Magnolia Way, or I could keep going and talk about Matthews.
Just keep going.
Okay.
Oh, we have to read the notice.
Oh, I'm sorry, separate
And
notice.
actually, we were gonna take these, I think we're gonna hear from the petitioner as well.
One at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. Then in that case, I would invite the petitioner's representative to come up.
So I'd
and-
recognize Attorney Paul Alfano on behalf of the petitioner.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. My name is Paul Alfano. I'm an attorney from Alfano Law Office in Concord, and with me is Jason Curtis, another lawyer in our office. And I did also want to introduce a couple of people that are here with the Nuevo, the applicant, Tim Coughlin in the maroon there. He's the general counsel for Marciello Group. Chris Marciello is the principal of the petitioner, Nuevo. And Mike Pappas is here as well, and he is the general contractor. Don't have too much to add to that. I think Mr. Lucer did a good job. The couple of points I did want to make is my client bought this property just last year. It was owned by Hutter the entire time, the entire history that he was talking about. And so we inherited what was there. And so what's there is, one thing is we do not own the lot in the corner there that you saw on your site walk. So we have, we can only do so much, but we're willing to do everything we can to get a street tree easement from those people. But we own the remaining 8 lots. As has been said, the road is pretty much built. We have to finish it, which my client will do, and my client will pay for it, post a bond if necessary. The water and sewer infrastructure, my understanding is it's already in. Of course, a building permit's been issued for one of the homes, and there, the city is plowing up past their driveway, so the city's already maintaining at least part of the road. And my understanding is they're also hooked into the water and sewer, and they're paying for those services. So, and with respect to the street tree easement, I really don't have much to add there either. You can see what it is. It's 8 feet, and we're willing to give whatever we can give. As I said, we inherited this, and we've been working with the city for several months, actually, to deal with these sort of issues. The main one being the utility easements, which he talked about. Again, that's something that we didn't do. It was there to begin. Why it was done, I don't know. But the way I would frame it is that if the layout happens and the way I was able to build these homes, they want to, Mike Pappas, as you saw his equipment out there, he's ready to go immediately. He's been there ready to go to build the 8 houses and get them into the market as soon as possible. And when it comes to that possibility of the city having to incur some expense to deal with the utilities, number one, it's speculative. Who knows if that'll even ever happen? But what we do know is that if these homes get built, by my math, let's say the homes sell for $475, and I'm not saying that's what they're going to be. The market will dictate the price. But 8 new homes, $475, call it a 3% tax rate. Even when you subtract out the taxes that are being paid now, that's about $100,000 a year in additional tax revenue. Now, that's certain, whereas this possibility of having to deal with the utilities is speculative. So I would ask you, if any of you are concerned about that issue, just to weigh those two things, the certainty of the additional revenue, which will go in perpetuity, of course. So even if work needed to be done next year, that money would continue to come into the city. And also, I want to point out, you've already have approved 2 layouts that we found, Archer Construction off River Street and Darlene Court. You've done it twice that we saw where there were existing utility easements. In fact, I think it was identical easements to these 2 utilities, and the city laid out those roads subject to the utility easements. So I think he mentioned the waiver. That's part of our request, a waiver of the development code that requires the conveyance of a warranty deed, which free and clear. So what we're asking is that you, of course, be laying this out subject to the utility easement. The legal standard, there is a legal standard for a layout. There's a 2-pronged test. Number one, you need to find that there's a public benefit from this. And I would submit there certainly is. I mean, number one is these homes will address the acute need for housing. He's ready to go to build these. The Magnolia Way is right off of another Class 5 road. It's part of the existing network of public roads and maintained roads in the city. 9 homes, it'll be used. The road will be used heavily. It'll facilitate transportation for school children. These things that I'm mentioning are things that the courts have said are the things to factor. And there's lots of factors to take into consideration. I'm just mentioning the ones that I think are relevant here. So that's the public benefit that I think is quite clear in this situation. If you find there's a public benefit to this road becoming public, then you look at whether the burden on the city outweighs the public benefit. And I would submit it doesn't. There'll be no cost to the city to acquire title to the road. There'll be no cost to the city to build the roads. The only cost that I see is the marginal increase in plowing and maintaining the remainder of the road, because some of it already is already being maintained. So it's a very nominal cost. And then finally, the speculative cost of having to maybe deal with the utilities, I've already addressed that, and I think the certainty of the revenue outweighs that. So that's all I've got to say about Magnolia Way, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, recognizing that this will go to MSFI as well? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So with that, I'm going to open up the public hearing portion of this. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Please approach the microphone, state your name and minutes for the minute taker, name and address for the minute taker. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So upon hearing no comments, I will close the public hearing except for written public comments, which will be accepted up until 1 p.m. Tuesday, June 20th. Written comments must be signed and submitted to the city clerk by the date and time to be included in, by that date and time to be included in the record. I will refer this matter to the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee, and they are scheduled to meet on June 21st, 2023. And that brings us to number, yes.
Just have to ask, so then will there be a workshop and council comments? What's the process? Is the MSFI committee going to make a recommendation and be listened to? Thank you.
Whatever the council decides it wants to do,
You got
as
it.
you well know, sir.
Yeah.
All right, number 2, thank you.
Notice is hereby given that a site visit and a public hearing are
down,
scheduled
Heidi.
before the Keene City Council to consider a petition on behalf of Nuevo Transfers LLC for the layout of intersection improvements to the Matthews Road right-of-way at Matthews Road and Winchester Street. Per order of the mayor and councilors of the city of Keene, this 20th day of April, 2023.
Right, and I would once again recognize our city engineer, Don Lucier, for
Thank you, Your
introduction.
Honor. So not unrelated to the Magnolia Way issue that you just discussed, Matthews Road reconfiguration, when the city accepted Magnolia Way layout in 2006, we required some intersection improvements be done across the street from Magnolia Way at the intersection of Matthews with Winchester Street. And I think that the best way to explain this is the photos you see here. On the left, you see a photo of what Matthews Road looked like before those improvements. There was a single lane northbound out of Matthews Road for traffic that was turning left and right onto Winchester Street. It was decided that adding a second lane for northbound traffic, it would be a dedicated right turn lane and a left turn through lane for those folks that wanted to go to Magnolia Way, would make the intersection function more effectively. In addition to that, we widened the road, added the curb that you see there in the distance, and a few other changes. So that was a requirement of the layout process. At the time, and I will go to the next page. At the time, the developer for Magnolia Way, Hutter Construction, also owned the triangular-shaped parcel at the intersection of Winchester and Matthews that you see here on the screen. Their intention, their plan was to convey to the city the triangular piece that you see highlighted in blue. It's labeled as Parcel A, and that was to be conveyed to the city for the purposes of widening the roadway. There was also a plan at that time to grant the city an easement in order to widen the roadway right-of-way without putting the remaining parcel into a state of noncompliance with zoning setbacks. So that was their idea at the time. They proposed that easement for highway purposes be gifted to the city, but it would still be part of the residential property's land, so it wouldn't count towards their setbacks. And that was done so that they could meet the city's roadway standards for the right-of-way width. Since this originally was heard by the council in 2006, that property is no longer belongs to the developer. That's changed hands. The property owner there, wasn't, I think, aware at the time that this easement concept was floating out there. I will point out that the easement is, I want to say it's maybe 2 feet wide, very, very narrow, little slim sliver. And there's no built infrastructure that the city needs to maintain within that sliver. It was really just done in order to widen the right-of-way to meet our roadway standards. So we don't see any real issues with doing away with that easement and simply widening the road and laying it out as a public way over the section that you see highlighted in blue. And that's what we're proposing to do with its, that's what the petitioner is requested to do with the petition. And just look at my notes. I think that covers everything. If there are any questions, otherwise I will welcome the petitioner.
All right. Question? All right, I'll welcome the petitioner back up to chat about this one.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not much to add, except to point out that my client doesn't own any of this land, but he's perfectly willing and very much wants to help out and will be responsible for getting a deed from Hutter and whatever else is required to make this happen. Again, I could go through the criteria, but clearly there's a public benefit. I mean, it's already been built, it's already being used by the public and being maintained by the city, so clearly there's a public benefit there, and certainly as of today forward, there'll be zero additional cost, because it's already, whatever cost has been incurred has already been incurred, so.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Any burning questions, recognizing that this will also be going to MSFI? Okay. We'll open up the public portion of this hearing. Would anyone from the public wish to speak to this? Please approach the microphone, state your name and address for the minute taker. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, save for written comments, which will be accepted up until 1 p.m. Tuesday, June 20th. Written comments must be signed and submitted to the city clerk by that date and time to be included in the record, and I will refer this matter to the MSFI committee. Thank you very much. And we have a third public hearing, number 3.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Keene City Council relative to Resolution R 2023-13, which at the time of the printing of this notice would require that the sum of $27,808,122 be raised by taxation during the current year, which together with $40,073,236 for estimated operating revenue, aggregating $67,881,358 is hereby appropriated for the use of the several departments of the city government, and further that the sum of $7,098,671 be appropriated for capital expenditures and capital reserve appropriations in the city's proprietary funds, funded by the use of capital reserves, fund balance, and current revenues for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023.
Thank you, and I'm going to give Counselor Powers, our Finance Committee Chair, a chance to introduce this, as it's sort of the Finance Committee's budget at this point.
Times they do a change, don't they? Thank you, Your Honor. It's my pleasure to introduce the city's next budget to the public. You'll have an opportunity to speak to the various items. The format you may have seen will be over at the tables has changed a little bit because we have a new software system. So there are a lot of adjustments to be made for a lot of folks as we work through it. But the final analysis, the numbers are the same, and the program is the same that we're putting forward to the city. The Finance Committee had met 4 different times for reviews of these budgets with the department heads, with the outside agencies, with those who were requesting some support from the city council. And at the end of the product, we didn't make any changes at all to the budget that's been proposed by the city manager, except for the fact that we learned from one of the agencies that would be a recipient of our funds that they were not going to be doing business in the future. So their $5,000 allotment was redistributed amongst 3 other agencies, the Senior Center, MCVFC, and Child Advocacy. All good programs, all good products, that $5,000 means a lot to each one of them, so very important. And just because we made that little change at the table doesn't require us to do an A version to this proposed budget. The budget as presented is about 4.4% higher than last year's budget. And while that seems to be a significant number, it's really a reflection of the changes that have had to be made to cover our costs. Just the cost of doing business is exorbitant, as we know when we go to the grocery store, but we still have to provide services, so it's gone up. We've had some changes in addition for employees, additional employees at the fire department. A couple other programs have additional employees, or a couple employees are changed in the status. So in the final analysis, I'm happy to say, and I think the committee agrees, because it was unanimous that we're presenting this to you, but it's a good product. And we're going to provide the best services we can at the best price. And I know when you start talking about it, what does it mean and what the tax rate's going to be? Well, that's hard to do at this point in time, because if you remember, the tax rate gets set in the fall, when all the funds and all the products have been taken care of and the state has done their calculations. But somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% of the city's portion of the tax rate is likely to increase. But it's still providing the best services that can be given for the cost of doing business. Thanks for those that have come. Thanks for all the work to everybody that's put a lot of work into this. This is not a simple process, and even though it only took 4 meetings to get through it, there's a lot of work that's gone into it. And I hope that the public will agree with us, and when it comes back to the city council in a week or 2 weeks at our next meeting, that you all agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the Finance Committee for doing such hard work over the last month. Now we go to the public portion of this public hearing, and I'll open up the public hearing. And would anybody like to speak to the budget generally? So just anything having to do with the budget at all? Okay, yes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name is Alan Stroshine. I live at 27 Salisbury Road here in Keene. I'm a very proud member of the Keene Elm City Rotary Club, and I'm the race director for the Clarence DeMar Marathon. I'm here really to thank you for past support. You've been supporting this race financially since 2012. There's a level funded line item in the budget this year that I will thank you in advance for your generous consideration. And I'm simply here, again, to express my gratitude, because we do not take the city's partnership for granted. It's a source of pride. And something that just came out this week, that this event, while we're very proud of it here in our community, it's a nationally known event. There is a website that goes by the name of Race Raves. They follow and track and kind of grade races across the country. And every 5 years, they put out a survey looking for the best races in each state. And we have retained our crown as the best marathon in the state of New Hampshire, as voted on by a national audience. Something else that was a source of pride this year is that we have a number of local entities who put on the best of type contests in town. And the Clarence DeMar Marathon was recognized by the Keene Sentinel as the best fundraiser in town. And so that's another source of pride, in that we're not just an event that brings a bunch of runners from around the country and clogs up the roads for a Sunday afternoon, but they recognize that this event is more than just a running event. It is a fundraiser that supports 100% of the Elm City Rotary Club's many, many projects. So my gratitude to you all in your support. I look forward to your future support and would entertain any questions if anybody had any.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Would anyone else like to speak to the budget? Yes. Just state your name and address for the minute taker, please.
Pat Walker, 17 Thompson Road. Just here for the resolution, and I wasn't sure because the FOP committee has not had the minutes come out, and I'm interested to know whether the bond for the Thompson Road was appropriated and it is gone through.
City manager?
It was the Thompson Road Stabilization Project.
We've got our finance director
Yeah,
up here too.
so we, so the FOP reviews these documents along with the operating budget, and then it gets tabled until the vote on the budget. So even the bonds don't get approved until the night the budget is voted on, which will be the next council meeting.
Okay, so that's why you didn't have it in the minutes at this point in time? Because the
It
minutes
should have been in
aren't
the
out
minutes.
yet?
It should have been in,
It's on the agenda,
yep.
later this evening.
It's later,
Oh, so- oh,
the
I'm
actual
too
bond
early?
is on the agenda for later, but
Right.
it's not
Do you
gonna
want
be
me to
acted,
wait for it? I mean, I don't have a problem.
it's not gonna be acted upon until the budget is adopted at our next meeting.
Yeah, because we're looking at a situation that if we don't get the project started early enough, now we're gonna be in December, now the project's not gonna work, now the road is still terrible. And so, you know, and we have had nobody come out other than Don Lucius to verify whether the situation needs to be done immediately.
Mhm.
So where are we on that?
So we'll know next week when.
Yeah, we have to, there is a process for approving the funds, and
Yeah, but we've been going since 2020, and it hasn't, still no one stepped up yet to know we're gonna get it done.
well, it's good because you have all 15 counselors here
The
to
only one, I
understand the
believe, was
importance of
Bob
passing
Williams. I
that.
think you went there when it first came out and said, whoa, I can't believe there's a road like this in the city of Keene. And with, here we are, 3 years later and nothing.
Thank you.
Yes. Don Lucius can speak.
Okay. I
just
think
need
we're,
the bond.
we're good. Any other comments on the budget?
Nope, nope, I just wanted to know where we were, 100% that it's going to be there, and the bond's going to be exactly what you have in your budget, and whether we're going to also get the $380,000 from the state, and that's going to stay with the Thompson Road and not go off to any other projects.
Yep.
So I don't want us to be running short of money because we need to do some adjustings as putting, you know, instead of riprap on the riverside, putting pylons on both sides. And it also takes part of my land, and I need to know where we're at. So
right. Thank you.
so I just keep going to Dawn and waiting to see where we're at? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak to the budget? Okay. Well, we'll forego going through every item line by line then, I suppose. And hearing no other public comments, I'll close the public hearing, except for written public comments, which will be accepted up until 4 PM on Tuesday, June 13th. Written comments must be signed and submitted to the city clerk by the date and time to be, by that date and time to be included in the record. I also want to remind counselors that per our rules of order, they will need to submit written communications containing any amendments or proposed amendments to the budget resolution. The deadline for receiving those communications will be 4 PM on Tuesday, June 13th, in order to make sure they get on the agenda. Okay? All right. That brings us to communications, number 1.
We have a communication from Adam Barabee. He's the new owner of the Muse Restaurant, and he is seeking the council's permission to serve alcohol at a sidewalk cafe that he is in the process of applying for.
Looking to Counselor Bosley for a motion. On suspending the rules.
I would move to suspend Section 26 of the Rules of Order to act on the request from Muse Restaurant for permission to serve alcohol at their sidewalk cafe.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion from Counselor Bosley, seconded by Counselor Filio. Counselor Bosley.
So this is basically a request that has come into us. Mr. Berube has recently opened Muse Restaurant, and it was the previous establishment operated a cafe in this location. He has applied for a sidewalk cafe license from the city clerk, and the site layout has been reviewed and approved by staff. So they're asking for an expedition due to the food festival that's happening on Saturday, which is why we need a suspension. We would not have time to get to another PLD meeting.
Any discussion on suspending the rules? Counselor Greenwald?
Had I known this was coming, I would have put it in writing. I have a business relationship with the gentleman, and therefore, I have a conflict.
Can we use the conflict that he has on
I believe
file?
it's already on record, but Counselor
On that
Alfano-
one? Okay, if it's good for you, it's good for me.
Okay. No objection to Counselor Greenwald recusing himself based on his, he submitted a document
Many
related to that.
documents.
Yeah.
Several abstentions, yes.
Couple.
Okay. Noted. So Counselor Greenwald will be sitting out. Any further discussion on suspending the rules? Seeing none, this does require a roll call. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remick?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Greenwald? Sorry. Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
All right, the rules are suspended unanimously, and I'm looking to Counselor Bosley for a motion, please.
I move to recommend that Muse Restaurant be granted permission to serve alcoholic beverages in connection with their Sidewalk Cafe license, subject to the customary license requirements of the City Council, compliance with the requirements of Section 46-1191 through 46-1196 of the City Code, in compliance with any requirements of the New Hampshire Liquor Commission. This license shall expire on March 1st, 2024.
Second?
We have a motion from Counselor Bosley, seconded by Counselor Giacomo. Any further discussion?
Same explanation as prior.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk, or, all in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. So that brings us to number 2.
This is a communication from the Monadnock Interfaith Project. It's encouraging the council's consideration for the inclusion of public restrooms and protected bike lanes in the proposed downtown project.
And we'll accept that communication as informational. Which brings us to committee reports, number 1.
An informational report from the Municipal Services Facility and Infrastructure Committee. They are accepting a communication from Judy Rogers, who spoke about wants versus needs, dealing with bike infrastructure, and a potential model to handle community events on Central Square.
And we'll file that as informational. Number 3.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the acceptance of a strategic planning grant. On a vote of 4-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute and expend a strategic planning grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for $50,000 to perform an engineering evaluation of the Robertson Field property and the West Street well facilities.
Looking to Council Powers for a motion. Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
We were joined by the Public Works Department, Assistant Director Aaron Costa, talking a bit about looking down the road to our ability to produce good water. And as many folks know, we own a piece of property off of Arch Street that's actually contiguous to the golf course. And it's somewhat near our fields of wells out on the other end of West Street. We really want to take a look at it and see how good it's going to be for us to use in the future as a water source. So initial evaluations have been made, and we're at that point now where we've got a solid program that needs to be put together by a qualified engineer. And we now have $50,000 available to us, and we ask that the city manager be authorized to execute and expend the strategic planning grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Number 4.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to a change order for appraisal services on the Winchester Street reconstruction project. On a vote of 4-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a change order for continuing professional services with MMC Appraisal Services for an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Thank you. Councilor Powers for motion. Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
A motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. This again has to do with our Winchester Street project, which is moving along very nicely. We're going back to the business of when we had to lay the place out, and there were some pieces of property that were owned by others that we need to either get permission to work on or take as necessary land to the project. We had some court proceedings, and we prevailed. And the next step is to put some value to this land in one particular case, and that's going to be up in Concord. And in order to go into that discussion with the state, the property owner, and the city, we want to have the best information. So we have an appraisal services on board. However, this extra work is going to be above the scope that they had put together. And in order to be in the best place, we'd like to do a change order for $20,000 to this particular project, 80% of which will be covered by the state and federal funding in the project. So this was a unanimous vote by FOP. I'd like the City Council to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Number 5.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to an amendment to an agreement with Keene State College. On a vote of 4-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute the 6th Amendment to the Municipal Services Agreement between the City of Keene and Keene State College.
Counselor Powers for a motion. Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would like the council to approve this. The Finance Committee approved unanimously that the manager be authorized to sign this amendment, the 6th Amendment to a fairly long-standing agreement, if I recall. It covers a lot of territory for our relationship with the college and the city and all the services we work with together. There weren't many changes made in the last couple, and there are no major changes proposed this time because the level of population on the campus has gone down, and the level of services required. It just seems right that we continue with the current agreement. The only substantive change in there is that has been $10,000 earmarked for prosecution services, and the recommendation is that be changed over and be used towards code and fire enforcement as it relates to off-campus issues that are dealt with by those folks. It also asks that this continue annually, an automatic renewal, unless either party say, we don't like each other, we want to try something different. And it really makes sense that we do that. We've got a pretty solid agreement that covers the costs that are necessary to make this thing work. And it was unanimous for FOP that this be approved. We hope you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. City Manager.
Thank you. Just one update for you this evening, which unfortunately isn't great news, and it's about the Robin Hood pool. While filling and preparing the pool for the summer season, we discovered an issue with Robin Hood Pool. And yesterday, our city engineer, if he's still here, thank you, Don, worked with the rec department to investigate the issue. In addition, we needed to consult with Weston and Sampson. If you remember, Weston and Sampson were the consultants that we used back in 2018 to evaluate the pool. Where we're at right now is it looks like we will unfortunately need to delay the pool opening for at least a couple of weeks to make some repairs so that the water stays in the pool. The Recreation Department is working on transportation options between the city's 2 pools during this time. If we are able to make the repairs and do not discover greater issues while making the repairs, the plan will be to open it just a little bit later. Either way, Director Bohannon is planning to provide an update during the 2nd committee cycle next month.
All right. We have one more time item, more time will be granted, which brings us to ordinances for a first reading. Number 1.
We have an application to amend the zoning map for parcel of property on the Old Walpole Road from rural to low density. It's a 7.1 acre parcel, and it is, the applicant is a Michael Conway, an agent from Monadnock Habitat for Humanity. And in addition to the application, we have ordinance O 2023-12, an ordinance relating to amending the zoning map, Old Walpole Road, rural to low density.
All right, and that'll be referred to the Joint Planning Licenses and Development Committee Planning Board, or reverse that? Planning. Which brings us to ordinances for second reading.
I believe actually the next few items on the agenda need to be tabled because they all relate to the operating budget.
That's right. So we'll table the ordinance O 2023-11A, so that can be considered after the adoption of the budget next time. We'll table resolutions R 2023-14, R 2023-15, and R 2023-16 until the June 15th City Council agenda to be considered after the adoption of the budget resolution. And we will table R 2023-13 for the same reason, or that is the budget.
Yes,
So
it is.
we'll table that till you take up the budget vote. At this time, I'm going to call for an adjournment for collective bargaining. I want to thank all those in attendance for your time and attention, and we are adjourned.